I do want to bring in Neama Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and current president here of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Always great to be on.
Of course. And first off, I do want to ask you, can you break down the charges that Diddy does face and really what the prosecution here has to prove?
Josh, there are three sets of charges. The least serious are the prostitution charges, and everyone knows what that is. That's the exchange of sex for something of value, usually money. And there has to be an interstate component. And here, some of these women were crossing state lines. Then you have the sex trafficking charges. And what separates sex trafficking from consensual sex, and we know that adults can consent to sex, no matter how freaky it is one of three things: force, fraud, or coercion. And in this particular case, the government is alleging force and coercion. Force speaks for itself. Diddy himself, his security, all the weapons that were confiscated. And then that coercion, that's that drug element. The victims here are alleging that they were drugged and forced to participate in these freak-offs, these orgies, over the course of days. Then you have the racketeering charge. And when you think of racketeering, usually you think of the mob, right? The cartel, some street gang. But racketeering is really any criminal enterprise, and that can be a loose association of two or more people that commit two or more racketeering acts. And here, the enterprise is Diddy and his entourage, similar to R. Kelly's entourage, for instance. And the RICO predicate acts are the sex trafficking, the violence, the forced labor. So those are generally the three sets of charges that comprise this indictment.
One thing I want to pop up here on your screen, it's a video that has been seen time and time again, circulated all over the internet. How might this hotel video showing Diddy assaulting Cassie affect the jury? He has admitted that, this is something that did happen. It's caught on video. So how could it impact the jury overall?
Josh, this video is highly impactful because video doesn't lie. We can all see with our own eyes Diddy beating Cassie Ventura at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. And let me just tell you how powerful this video is. Even after Cassie filed her lawsuit in November 2023 and Diddy settled it the next day, he denied the allegations. Even after his homes in Los Angeles and Miami were raided in March of last year, Diddy continued to deny the allegations. Only in May of last year, when CNN got a copy of this video and released it, did Diddy finally issue some sort of apology. I think the video is going to be the best evidence in this case. And if you believe Cassie Ventura, and I do, Diddy taped many of these freak-offs, both for his own sexual pleasure and maybe to maintain control over some of the other participants. And to the extent that those videos are played, I think it's going to be very damning evidence for the defense.
And I have to ask, when you talk about the defense overall, what is their defense? I know that there's been obviously different hearings that have been held. The defense has spoken to members of the media. What is their defense overall here?
Josh, their defense is going to be the following. This happened, but it was consensual. And whenever you're dealing with a sexual assault case, usually the defense will fall into one of two categories. I didn't do it, there was no sexual activity, or I did and it was consensual. And because we're not dealing with minors here, the defense is going to argue consent. And really, they're going to argue that the victims here, they're lying. And they're lying for one of three reasons, or maybe all of them. Money. And many of them have filed civil lawsuits. Cassie's, of course, has settled for an 8-figure sum, 10 million or more. Then you have maybe victims who are seeking fame because of Diddy's power and influence in the entertainment industry. And last, maybe revenge. And, oftentimes defendants will argue that this is a disgruntled ex that has an axe to grind. So this case will indeed be based entirely on cross-examination of the victims. So the government, of course, will want to corroborate their testimony. Some of these allegations were made many years later. The civil lawsuits certainly don't help because it creates at least the argument that this is about money and there's a potential motivation to lie or fabricate the evidence. So the government's going to want video. They're going to want independent witnesses. Obviously, members of Diddy's entourage help procure these women, set up the freak offs, get the hotel rooms, set up the lights and cameras. So to the extent you have video, you have individuals that corroborate this victim testimony, I think that's going to be helpful for the Department of Justice in this case.
As far as the defense here, we are going to see the jury selection take place tomorrow. Testimony expected to get underway here in about a week or so. So the following week after jury selection, what are the sides looking for when you talk about a possible jury pool here? It's unlikely that people haven't necessarily heard about this case or at least know who Diddy is. So what is the prosecution, the defense, what are they looking for in a jury?
Prosecution and defense, they're looking for favorable jurors. And like you said, Josh, everyone in the entire world has heard about this case. There's no place in the country, or maybe even the world, you can move this trial to. It is indeed the trial of the century, or certainly the biggest trial since maybe Johnny Depp, maybe even going back to OJ. So what the defense is looking for, they're looking for favorable jurors. And what are favorable jurors? These are jurors that are skeptical of these types of allegations. Maybe people that think Me Too has gone too far. Maybe jurors who think that, well, women or men who put themselves in this situation can't later argue rape. This is really regret more than anything. Of course, the government is going to want to exclude those types of jurors, as well as any jurors that are potential fans of Diddy, because we know that celebrities tend to do better at criminal trials and even civil ones than ordinary folks. So any fans, the prosecution is going to want to get them off. Any stealth jurors, people that might want to get on this panel and write a book about it when it's all said and done. So I think both sides are going to have their jury consultants, and they're going to use their intuition to remove any of these types of jurors. We have about 600 of them coming into the potential panel. They'll be stricken one by one, and the 12 that remain are going to be the 12 jurors in this case.
As you mentioned here, this is a high-profile case. There's a lot of celebrities who have been named, involved in some way. So I have to ask, because I know we don't necessarily know for sure if Diddy will testify. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that he will take the stand?
I do not think he will. I think it's far too risky for the defense to put him on the stand. Now, there have been some rumors on social media that he will. And if he does, the entire case is going to come down to his testimony, which is typical when a defendant takes the stand. I think the defense is going to focus on undermining the credibility of the victims in this case. And if they believe that they've done a good enough job on cross-examination, they'll probably protect their client. Because if Combs takes the stand, then it's a free-for-all and the government can go after him. And that really opens the door to a very grueling and aggressive cross-examination that will probably last days.
What about other high-profile celebrities who might be involved, maybe called to testify, might be there in the courtroom? What do we know about that?
That's the biggest question in the case, Josh. And, obviously when these allegations came out, and, this is really one of the worst kept secrets in Hollywood, there are a lot of other people who allegedly participated, many of whom are rich and famous celebrities. So the question is, who is going to be named by witnesses during the course of this trial, other rich and famous celebrities, and what is going to be the effect on those individuals, both inside and outside the courtroom? I can tell you right now that really no one in Hollywood wants anything to do with this case. They're trying to stay as far away from as possible for obvious reasons. So to the extent that Cassie takes a stand, I believe she's going to be the government's star witness, and she starts naming names. Those individuals are going to be in for a world of hurt. Their reputational fallout will be significant.
My last question for you here, what kind of message do you think that whatever happens here is going to send about maybe accountability there in the entertainment industry?
I think it will send a significant message. Some of these allegations date back decades, Josh, and let's not forget, if it wasn't for Cassie really opening the door and filing that bombshell lawsuit, and if Diddy had settled it earlier before these allegations were made public, he may still be a free man right now. It was really her. And obviously, Diddy has to be responsible for his own conduct, but this was taking place for years, decades before anyone decided to move forward. So if Diddy walks away a free man, I think it would really set the movement back significantly. And if he's convicted, which I believe he will be, I think this will just be the beginning of the reckoning for the music industry. We've already seen it in the entertainment industry with folks like Weinstein, but I think the music industry is next up for both prosecutors and civil plaintiffs lawyers.
And one thing I think a lot of people wish is that there were cameras allowed in the courtroom so we could see all of this unfold. But of course, reporters will be there to gather the information. Not exactly the same, but Neama Rahmani, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Anything you want to add, anything I missed before I let you go?
Thanks, Josh. I got to agree with you on the cameras there. Unfortunately, in federal court, as well as New York State courts, there are no cameras allowed. And I'm a big believer in public access. We have free and open trials in this country. So that's something we need to take up with our Supreme Court justices because they don't allow cameras in federal court. Instead, we get those sketches. I do believe that the public has a right to know and to watch this trial if they indeed want to do so.
All right, Neama Rahmani, thank you again for taking the time, as always, to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. I'm sure we're going to be talking much more about this case.